Yeah, welcome back to The Wrap, everybody. Now, I don't know how many of you have held corporate jobs in your time, but most companies tend to have pretty strict rules and standards for its employees, covering everything from vacation time to dress codes to intellectual property. And if an employee fails to follow these rules, said employee gets fired permanently. One would also assume and hope that the same basic principle would apply to high-level government employees as well, like those who work at, I don't know, the IRS. But that's not the case. A new report by the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration found that hundreds of former IRS employees terminated for a wide range of previous performance and conduct issues have been rehired. The report basically says, in a nutshell, why are you hiring problem employees? Okay, the language might be slightly different than that. Let's put up what we call a full screen graphic. We are concerned, is the quote, that the IRS may not adequately considering prior performance issues when selecting former employees for hire. For example, 2 employees were failing critical job elements at the time they had separated from their prior employment with the IRS. So exactly how many problem employees did they hire back? And why were they fired in the first place? According to the report, 7,168 IRS employees, get that number in your head, about 7,000, were rehired between January 1, 2010 and September 30th, 2013. The reasons for their termination varied, but apparently a number had a hard time over their taxes, or at least filing them anyway, which is kind of important when you work for the IRS. 141 of the formerly fired employees had prior tax issues, 5 of which were found by the IRS management to have willfully not filed their tax returns again. And no, we're not talking about Al Sharpton. They work for the IRS. And if that wasn't enough, the remaining terminated employees had prior substantiated employment and conduct issues, including, another graphic please, unauthorized access of taxpayer accounts, fraud, falsifying employee forms, email, internet misconduct, absence of leave, workplace disruption, stealing a stapler. I mean, you name them, they're on there. One employee who was absent without leave for 312 hours and whose file was explicably marked, "Do not rehired," guess what? Was rehired. What the hell is the IRS thinking, Mr. Unger?
It's obviously indefensible. I certainly wouldn't try to defend it. It really cuts at the heart of those of us who see government as having the potential to do great good. You hear a story like this and you just think government's a waste. But I'll tell you what really bugs me. Congress will, of course, have hearings over this, right? And the Republicans will use the opportunity to condemn Obama. The Democrats will use the opportunity to defend Obama. You know what they won't do? They won't find out who hired these people back and fire their you-know-whats.
That's a good point.
That's what they won't do. They won't get to the heart of how something like this can happen in a government agency. And we'll keep having the same problem.
Lisa, you file your tax returns as far as we know. What do you think about all this?
The question I have is, is why? Why hire these people back? I don't know of any other corporation where you could do something like, and especially where you're putting other people at risk in terms of taxpayers, us.
Is it crony IRSism?
It's stupidity.
Well, look, the IRS has about 90,000 employees. So 4 people stealing a stapler or whatever, that's not all that surprising.
I was kidding about the stapler.
Yeah, I know. I just like that example a lot. But in recent years, there have been several reports about staff shortages. So I think they may be having to rehire people because nobody wants to work at the IRS.
Well, she makes a good point. That who the hell wants to work there? So
also,
you know what? That's not true. It's not true.
No, I did
they
research.
They have lots of applications, and we have these newfangled things called computers.
There's several reports about staff shortages in the past few years.
Computers can
for whatever reason
track when someone's been fired.
Right.
You can find employees. And there may be staff shortages. It's probably more
Come on,
about
I'm trying
budgets.
to get creative here, Rick, and you're totally ruining it.
Well, the unemployment rate's at 5.6%. That maybe there just aren't enough people out there to apply. Right. Now we're going to discuss that actually later, which is should that really be the unemployment rate? So this is a tease within a segment, which is a good thing. But it's just amazing that the IRS, after all this time, just can't catch a break. That this sort of stuff gets out.
It's always been an ill-fated government agency because nobody likes tax man.
Well, doesn't your boss Steve Forbes, doesn't he want to get rid of the IRS altogether?
My
at least have a flat
boss
tax?
Forbes very much wants to get rid of the IRS, wants to have a flat tax. I'll tell you what, I have told Steve that I could actually get on board the idea so long as you make provisions for people at the bottom of the ladder so that they don't get caught up in that. He agrees with that, by the way. Steve's proposal is not at all unreasonable. My big problem with that, as he knows, is you have to convince me that Congress won't go ahead and do what they've always done, which is start cutting special interest breaks to the flat tax.
Okay.
Stay honest to it. I'm cool with it.
Because we heard a lot about it during that one
Yeah.
campaign. Was
Yeah.
it 96
probably
when he ran?
Steve was running.
Yeah, and then suddenly that became. I thought somebody else would pick up the mantle and run on flat tax.
Well,
but
some
for whatever
are,
reason,
but not as effectively as Steve, because Steve is so credible on the issue.
right.
Yeah.
Will he run again? By the way, since we're on the topic.
But everybody used to like to make
Just
fun
curious.
of the flat
Everybody
tax.
else
Right,
is.
right.
I asked him
Yes.
to.
Okay, everybody
he
else
won't
is
do
running.
it.
I figure why not?
Team Forbes. I mean, everybody used to make fun of the flat tax, but
Yeah, no, they did. You're right. And it's not crazy at all. It's actually a very sensible proposal so long as you make allowances for people on the bottom.
Lisa?
That sounds like it makes sense, but it's still going back to the issue of what the IRS is doing. There is no explanation given, and that's something that really should be as how these people got back in after doing some of the things, not doing some of the things that affected where they weren't paying their own taxes, where they were peeking at information that they were not supposed to. I mean,
of course, you know, we
really-
did see that graphic where it was maybe 11 people out of 90,000.
Well, just for those certain things.
Right.
yes.
So,
But 20% of
the
them
Wall
though,
Street
were
Journal
doing,
did
continuing
say,
to do things that were
But see,
wrong
that would
after
be,
they were rehired.
That would be a good defense if somebody were picking on the IRS
Well, it's not a defense,
for
it's
bad
just-
things happening. You know what I mean? But when, so you know, you could say, look, it was only 4 people. I think that's a perfectly
and most
good
of
argument.
the rehires were
But
not
we're
conduct
rehiring them.
problems.
We're rehiring them.
But that's the
Right.
question. Why
Why?
are they rehiring so many people if, as you say,
crazy.
they're getting so many job applications at the IRS?
Look,
People just
It's
banging
still
down
no
the doors
excuse.
to
So
work there.
If any one person at the IRS was fired for looking up my information when they weren't supposed to, and they got rehired because they can't get enough people, I'm not okay
They were
with that.
probably
Right.
looking up their date from Tinder,
Probably
you know,
right,
like,
yeah. That's
oh,
probably right.
so
Checking their
this
credit.
new girl I'm dating, what's her taxes like?
Not
I wonder
okay.
if the people that keep reapplying or want to work there think they'll get some sort of tax break. Like, oh, well, I work here, so it's like working at McDonald's where you get 15% off your food.
Can you imagine being fired and then reapplying?
Well, you know,
No.
and I don't have this officially. I read about it in the Inquirer, but
Bizarre.
apparently Lois Lerner was rehired and she's running the IT department. And on that note,
The Inquirer.
I leave you. Anyway, coming up next, having a sick child, or at least one with special needs, is not easy on any family. But one woman gave her husband the ultimatum of a lifetime after learning their newborn son would be born with Down syndrome. What'd she do? We'll tell you next on The Daily Wrap.